the last thing I want to talk about here today, I want to talk about the revenue sharing, which started today on July 1st. It's been a hot topic, obviously, for a long time. The court case was settled just a few weeks ago. Long and short of it is that now every team in the NCAA has up to $20.5 million that they can distribute to their athletes as they see fit. Obviously, most schools are going heavy into football and men's basketball. Depending on the school, you're going to distribute those differently. Kansas is probably much more of a 50-50 split with football and basketball. Duke is probably a very heavy basketball lean. Georgia is a heavy football lean. They're all kind of doing it a little bit differently. They'll handle it their own way. Fortunately, there was some concern right away that Iowa State would not be able to necessarily hit the max payout for revenue sharing right away. That fear has since been quelled. Iowa State is immediately starting off a $20.5 million distribution, and that is the plan going forward some way or another. Athletics can fund it for a few years, but then eventually they'll want the university or ideally the state of Iowa to pass legislation to direct funding for this stuff to Iowa State and Iowa and potentially UNI or some version of that to UNI as well. That's more of a political issue. I honestly don't know what like statewide support on something like that would look like. I think if you were interested in running for governor in 2026 and you wanted to bring up the idea of passing legislation to help fund this, I would think that would be a fairly popular issue. Not going to go into it any more than that because we don't go into this, politics is outside of the purview of this YouTube channel. I'm not really interested in getting into that at all. But if you were trying to, come up with a popular issue to grab Iowa State alum to vote for it, I would think that proposing legislation to direct funding to cover Iowa and Iowa State's revenue sharing distributions to the athletes would be a popular thing. However, we do know Iowa State is meeting the $20.5 million. We did get a story from the QC Times today that Iowa State is planning on distributing money to every single athlete, not just in revenue sports, so not just football, not just men's basketball, not just football, not just men's basketball, and not just women's basketball, but cross country, wrestling, track and field, softball, golf, soccer, all of it. And every athlete's going to be getting something. Now, they are leaning heavy towards football and basketball, which rightfully so. They bring in the money. But Jamie Pollard brought it up as, we think this, they think that this is a good, embodiment of the Iowa State culture, is that we take care of our athletes and we believe that it's more than just the star power, that the cross country runner and the soccer player and the softball player and the golfer and the swimmer, that they are as big a part of Iowa State athletics as, Rocco Becht, as Tamin Lipsey, maybe nationally from a dollars and cents standpoint, football and men's basketball and women's basketball are your biggest earners. But, the other athletes in the school are also a big part of the identity of the athletic program. So Iowa State is choosing to distribute money in a way that reflects that. Now, to take that a step further, we got an interesting article from 247 today about, this was specifically from TJ Otzelberger, and that they are instituting a merit-based system for revenue sharing. So it's not public at all what Iowa State is distributing. I don't think it will ever be public, short of like some sort of FOIA request from a Matt Brown or whatever. I don't think we'll ever like really know exactly what the distribution looks like, but football gets X amount of dollars, basketball gets X amount of dollars, the other sports get X amount of dollars based on, what they contribute and all this. Basketball is choosing to handle their revenue distributions to the athletes based on merit, which I think is absolutely the right decision. They're not just going to hand out blank checks to freshmen you're going to have to earn it. I think that vibes with TJ's overall philosophy on how he conducts his program. I think that's the right way to handle it. If you're Iowa State, I mean, sure, are other programs that they're competing with going to write blank checks to freshmen, promising huge chunks of the revenue sharing? Probably. I mean, probably that's going to happen. Someone's going to do it. Maybe Houston, maybe BYU, maybe, whoever. It could be anybody. Iowa State is going to institute this on a merit-based system, which makes perfect sense for TJ's situation. I'm bringing the comments back up. For TJ's situation, and I think that makes sense as far as how it goes. I don't know if Matt Campbell is running it the same way. I think it would make sense for that to be the case, for a merit-based system, maybe the revenue sharing, maybe your revenue sharing works similarly to how helmet stickers used to / do work. I don't know if Iowa State really does helmet stickers anymore, but it's that kind of thing where if you get certain accolades or you do certain things, you display good leadership qualities in particular situations or whatever it is, that you earn points. And then at the end of the season, you have X amount of points, and that's how many revenue sharing dollars you get for the next season or something like that. Now, I'll be curious how that works with, like, let's say, are you ever going to choose to reduce a player's revenue sharing thing? That's an interesting situation that I think is going to have to be, you're going to cross that bridge when you get there. My guess is that, like, if I were handling it, you would have a schedule on, when guys would raise up a little bit based on how long they've been in the program and their achievement and things like that. But I don't think you would, like, reduce players' cuts just based on them having a down year or something like that. If they got in trouble or something like that, or they, like, had problems with academics, or they violated team rule, then, then you probably have some sort of, I don't know if penalty is the right word, but you have some sort of consequence from that. And I'm sure that will be outlined in some sort of contract at some point. But, I'd be curious to see how that gets handled. If you're giving a full revenue share to just, this is just a arbitrary. Let's say you're giving a full revenue share to Milan Momcilovic. And this season, he's bad. He starts out rough, moves to the bench, can't get it, is rough, can't get it together, and finishes the season just playing like 5 or 10 minutes a game type of thing. You're obviously not going to cut Milan's pay because he had a tough season. But if you're doing it on merit, how do you handle that? And obviously, that's just an arbitrary name. Pick anybody you want. It doesn't matter. Taman Lipsey. There's a lot of newness to this social situation that coaches will have to deal with. I think that's just it's just kind of the reality of the situation. But, reading through this, the quotes from TJ are encouraging. He said the alignment on our campus from the top down has been strong. Everybody's on the same page where we've been locked in. We've had to play. We've been very disciplined in terms of how we execute that and how we move forward. So we position very well as we enter this new period. I think that sounds great. I think that to me, that tells me that they've got a plan. They're not sitting back on their hands like, oh gosh, this is all dumb. This is all, I don't like this, and back in my day, this or whatever. They're taking a very level-headed approach to this. They're taking a very modern approach to this and saying, listen, we're happy that guys are getting paid. I mean, Iowa State is playing in a basketball tournament in the fall against St. John's and Creighton in a big tournament where the entire existence of the tournament is as a player revenue sharing tournament. All the revenue from that tournament will get distributed to the athletes that take place in it, that take part in that tournament. Iowa State is obviously taking a very, player forward approach to this revenue sharing thing. And I'm glad to see that TJ has a positive attitude about it and that they've got a plan for everything. So I'm encouraged by what the little bit I have seen from Jamie Pollard, from TJ Otzelberger, from Matt Campbell. There was Jamie Pollard had some quotes in May and June that he was being very honest and transparent about how, this is just a random $20 million item that has shown up on the budget kind of out of nowhere. and very few programs in collegiate athletics are ready to just absorb 20 million dollars of extra expense every year. And he was very open and honest. And of course, it being June and there not being much, not much else going on, you had lots of YouTubers just jumping all over that. Um, there's a couple of specifically that, I don't necessarily need to call them out too much. Um, but, you know, I would say if we can get, everybody, I would say, locked in on what's going on a little bit better, and figuring out, what's clickbait, what's rage bait, and what's actually real news. You know, I think that would be better and using a little bit level head. But in the end, Jamie Pollard was just being honest, and he was expressing thoughts that every school in the country has had. Is like, how are we going to pay for this? Now, some states, I think Tennessee has been very like forward thinking about this and very like fast acting on this, and okay, we're gonna get money to the University of Tennessee to make sure that they've got this covered, and that our football program can remain competitive and all that. And I think, as I mentioned before, you know, I think the state of Iowa really needs to take a look at this, because Iowa does not have pro sports. Iowa State and Iowa football are the pro sports for the state of Iowa. They bring in a tremendous amount of tourism dollars every year. So investing $41 million into the two programs to cover revenue sharing costs is not a sunk cost. There will be a lot of people that say, "Oh, I can't believe we shouldn't be shouldn't be paying players. We shouldn't waste our money on this. We've got all these other things we need to take care of." I get it. I do. I genuinely understand that argument, that dedicating $41 million to give to a bunch of college kids to play sports seems like a waste of money. I get it. I do. However, the economic impact of Iowa State and Iowa having high major athletic programs is much greater than $41 million and it's not just game day impact, like people spending money and buying beer and stuff in Iowa City and in Ames for game days. It goes way beyond that. It's publicity for the universities. It's publicity for the state. It's eyes on everything that's going on around here. There's data to back up that when teams make a run in the NCAA tournament, like the Cinderella runs, or they have like a big season in football or something like that, that enrollment actually goes up. Enrollment will spike because of athletics achievements. There's data to prove that. When George Mason and Loyola Chicago made their runs, when VCU made their runs to the Final Four, their enrollment spiked. When Rutgers had their big season under the first Greg Schiano run, when they had like Ray Rice and a few other guys or whatever, Rutgers enrollment spiked a little bit after that. Athletics achievements help out the state and the universities in lots of different ways, and investing the money in to make sure that these two programs stay at the tippy top of the college athletics world is crucial. It's not only just a tourism thing. It's not just bringing money in and eyes on the state of Iowa, but it's also just sometimes as a society, we need a win. We need something to go right and to feel like things are going well. And, however your feelings are about the world around us at the moment, we can always use wins just as a group, as a society. And, coming together to make this happen, to make sure that Iowa State and Iowa have good football going forward, I think is a massive net win that benefits everybody. Even if you don't watch college football, you don't watch college basketball, you hate sports, Iowa State and Iowa being relevant impacts you if you live in the state of Iowa. It just does. And it's important to invest in. It is no different than a city or a state, pulling together funds to bring a pro sports franchise to their city or to build a new arena or whatever it is. It's the same thing. But in this case, we're just making sure that our college athletics programs can compete for recruits on the national stage. So I think It'd be an interesting one to watch going forward. And like I said, I really hope that our legislators in the state of Iowa come together and at least take a look at this and say, hey, what can we do to help make this whole thing better and to give Iowa State and Iowa athletics the best chance they can to be competitive nationally going forward.